Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Buff Nagel the podcast, where we explore entertaining and enlightening discussions of the adventure of life and all things good. From science and technology to history and philosophy to leadership and success. We hope to give you a better understanding of the world and skills for everyone to pursue their own adventure.
Well, hi, everybody, and welcome back to Buff Nagel, the podcast, where we talk about all things good in the pursuit of the adventure of life. I am Rafe, and if this works according to plan, this episode should drop on a Tuesday, which makes it a great day because it's a Buff Nagely Tuesday day. And if you are one of our great listeners, then you should be expecting that. We're back on schedule now. We took a little break around the Easter time. And those of you who are great listeners that have made us top 10% podcast know that that's typically we belong on Tuesdays. Buffnagel at buffnagel.com. Send us a note. Share the love, share the buff. Give us a 5-star review. Hit subscribe. Hit like. Okay, there's a word for this in the podcast parlance. It's called something like CTA. It's like community engagement or something. Like, okay, just, you know what? If you do these things, I don't have to read this stuff anymore. All right, tell a friend to listen, and you'll get a free episode somewhere buried in the show notes is a place to buy me a coffee. You can do that. But you know what? What you really want is what's right here in front of me is America's favorite rocket scientist, Bob Luzenski, is here with us today, and we are sitting here on the weekend after Artemis II has successfully returned to Earth. The Artemis II mission is complete, I guess. Artemis II didn't return to Earth, but Bob will talk all about that stuff. But before the podcast drops on Tuesday, a very successful Artemis II endeavor. Bob, I think you are doing fantastic. Is that correct?
You know it, right? The past 10 days have been amazing. It was just so much fun to watch this mission. Everything about it. I'm excited that we're talking about it so close to the end of the mission. And in fact, just an hour or two before we started our recording. In fact, we shifted our recording session because the crew was arriving home to Houston, and there was a stream and an event for that. And just getting to see and listen to this crew one more time, talk about their experience. It was just, there aren't enough words for me to describe how much I enjoyed this past 10 days.
It was like being a little boy all over again.
A boy of 14, yes. Okay. Yeah, exactly. Better in so many ways. The last time that we sent humans to the moon was 53 and a half years ago, December of 1972, Apollo 17. They landed on the moon. I was a young boy of 14, early teenager of 14 at the time, and the technology of the time. By then, I think we might have had a color TV in the house, and we were still, though, dependent on watching it on one of the three networks. Of course, it was CBS with Walter Cronkite, but this time it was the stream that NASA was putting out on YouTube. I had one stream on the big TV in the room, and then I had another stream on my computer in front of me, and on my tablet, my iPad next to the computer, I had the 3D virtual simulation of the spacecraft, and that showed where they were, what the moon looked like, and the Earth and the sun, and distances and speeds. It was great.
So Bob knows that there's a whole bunch of family things going on here for me right now, and I have not been able to commit as much to this endeavor. The family announcement will come shortly, we hope. But there's, I relied on Bob. He's like, okay, I'm hearing this. What do you think? And he'd be like, here's a link, here's a link, here's a link, here's a link. And he would send me all sorts of links about everything that was happening. Okay, so let's rewind, and we're going to go back to before April 1st. So the last time we talked about Artemis, it was kind of sad days because they had decided that they had to take the rocket back inside the building and fix some stuff with some things, and then they'd have to roll it back out. But they fixed the things and they rolled it back out, and they said, we're going to launch on April 1st. And it was, for me, it was unexpected. But okay, so what did they fix? And take me back there.
We talked about this last time, and it was there was a helium valve in the upper stage. They couldn't get access to it at the pad, so they had to roll it back to the vehicle assembly building. They did that. They fixed it. And then they rolled the vehicle back. And, the funny thing about this was two things that were amusing to me. As the day grew closer to April 1st, I'm like, they're not going to do this on April 1st. This isn't going to happen. And then there was, is this really happening? Are we actually going to fly a moon mission? I've only been waiting for 53 and a half years to do this, to see them do this again. Is this really happening? There was a surreal quality to it. But then what underlined that feeling was after the crew was up and they were, one of the numerous press events where they were asked questions and they talked and very eloquently, I might add. I'm going to miss this crew, miss listening to them every day, going about their business and then doing these press events where they actually answered human questions about the human experience, which especially if you haven't watched the stream of their homecoming, that was on Saturday. You can find it on NASA's YouTube channel, and you should watch it. How they talk about this is just worth so much. But one of the most amusing things they said on one of those press events while they were in flight was they were as surprised as anybody that they launched on the first. Seriously, I mean, they joked about it. They was like, hey, we're really going.
Well, okay, so you and I we were in the camp that was, how should I say it? Reluctant. Well, I don't want to say reluctantly optimistic. We had some trepidations about some things.
Well, and we talked about that the last time too.
Right.
And the risks. And, I mean, it's good to go in with your eyes open. And, I have the experience since the 14-year-old boy to have, gone to university, got a degree in electrical engineering, eventually actually had a job, got a job in October of 1985, working at the Kennedy Space Center at Launch Complex 39, working on the space shuttles, only to see 3 months later to be an eyewitness to the Challenger accident. And that changed my view of this. It went from the young, even Apollo 13 didn't change that view, right? Because
nothing bad
had an
happened.
accident. They came, something did bad happen, but they managed to survive it.
Right.
It was NASA's successful failure. But, so between that and then the losing Columbia in 2003, it's sobering and seeing that and then seeing the concerns, and some of them were, the heat shield being the biggest one, but also just sending this vehicle out on the first with the life support system on board for the first time and sending humans to the moon on an 8-day trip to the moon. One of the things that alleviated that concern for me after we did that particular podcast episode was I was listening to a briefing before the launch, and the NASA Associate Administrator Amit Kshatriya saying that they had flown, and I didn't know this. I didn't know this before he said this. They had actually flown this life support system on board the space station. So they had used the base they had on the space station to fly this life support system. So it wasn't the first time it needed to function in microgravity. It had actually flown before. And so that was like, okay, all right, I get it. I get why you guys, I mean, he still acknowledged it's a risk, but I get why you guys are finding that risk acceptable. And then, of course, there was the concerns about the heat shield. And so, going into this, there's, you fly to the moon, you're coming back from the moon, you're falling back to Earth, and nothing more emphasized that than these views on the solar array wings on the spacecraft, on the European Service Module that provide the power. The cameras didn't supply the power. The solar wings supplied power, and they had GoPro cameras on each of the 4 wings that gave us just some of the most amazing views. I think back to Apollo, where they only had one camera, video camera, and it was inside the spacecraft, and we were dependent on when we had these press events where the crew might try to give us a view of the Earth or the moon. And, it was always difficult because, the Earth is apparently so bright that it's just overexposed. And they were able to give us some really good views. And coming back all day Saturday, after watching on Monday, as the moon just kept getting bigger and bigger as they approached and rounded the moon, to see the Earth, especially that last day on Friday, to see it getting bigger and bigger and bigger, to where it then became as tall as the frame was, and then still getting bigger. And it's like, they are falling to Earth.
Well, we had this discussion, back and forth over the week with things like, hey, it looks like they are, they've made it around, or, they've, and the question I had for you was, when are they going to hit that threshold between the moon's gravity well and the Earth's, when you fall one way or the other, where's the, what would you call it? I want to use a water. I want to use a water thing. I'm like,
the poles are equal.
Yes. So they trip. They get up over the top of the hill, and then they start falling down to Earth. And what was really interesting to me was to watch the little gauge that told you the velocity. Yeah. Yes. And I kept thinking, because it was like, really, they're only doing 1,000 miles an hour. I mean, that's it. It's like, yeah, but it's going up, and it's tick, 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 tick. They are falling from very high altitude. They're falling from an altitude of what, 100?
It was
200,000 miles, whatever.
They were falling all the way from, they were never out of Earth orbit. The entire thing, even when they looped around the moon. Now, the moon gave them a little boost of speed as they fell towards the moon, but they rounded the moon, and the point they were slowest was the point where they rounded the moon, and they were the farthest from Earth. And then they were speeding up the whole way. And yes, at the time they left the moon's gravitational influence and the Earth's gravity. It's not that they left the moon's gravitational influence. It's that the Earth's gravitational influence was pulling bigger, stronger. Yeah. And that, at that point, they were truly falling to Earth.
Right. And it's I just had this picture in my head of this is the world's largest roller coaster ride.
Yes.
Yeah, and they got up over the top, and down they go. And I tell you, it's a long fall for a roller coaster.
Yes, and the amazing thing there is, clearly they get used to microgravity. They get used to that frame of reference where they're falling at the same speed as the vehicle around them, and so that reference frame is, there's no gravity. There's nothing pulling them in any direction, except when they have accelerations due to firing the engines to adjust their course, which they did several times. But it brings to mind with reentry day, it's only been
It's been
a day since that happened. But it's one thing, before they hit the Earth's atmosphere, they're falling as fast as they're going to fall. And they had that 6 minutes where the friction between the spacecraft and the Earth's atmosphere caused a sheath of plasma being one of these states of matter.
Not the stuff that's in your blood. Right?
Not that plasma, a different plasma, and not the solid liquid or gas that we learned back in the day in high school science class. There are apparently a few other states of matter, one of them being plasma. And that sheath of plasma doesn't allow, it works effectively as a block to electromagnetic radiation, of which radio waves is one example. So for that 6 minutes, while that plasma sheath, to say those two words together, enveloped around the spacecraft, and they couldn't get a radio signal out, they were slowing down due to the friction, and they continued to slow down due to friction with the atmosphere. But at some point, they transitioned from, falling with that speed to falling to Earth, more straight down.
Right.
And the shots of the spacecraft from aircraft, the views of that, the camera views of that before the parachutes came out, all I can think of is they're just falling now.
It really feels like falling when there's the backdrop of the clouds.
Like falling.
And actually, that was very. I found it frightening to watch that, because I was like, "There's 4 guys in there, three guys and a lady. Depending on how there's 4 human beings,
four humans
on that in that little box, and it is falling really fast, and they are trusting that the thing they put together, whenever they put it together and launched 10 days ago, and it's been sitting at 1 billion degrees below zero as it's going up to the moon.
Or maybe not quite that cold.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Depends on the temperature scale, Bob.
Exactly, as we were discussing before.
Yes. So, but watching that, it's like, I cannot imagine what happened if they dropped that thing.
Well, let's not. Let's just not. It didn't happen.
That's the concern. That was the final concern. Is this thing going to do what it needs to do? And you know what? It did. And it went. It with almost without exception. There's a couple things we probably ought to address. Almost without exception, everything went as well, if not better than expected.
It was an amazing mission. And yes, it's interesting. They had these press briefings every day of the flight, and I love these things. Not so much for some of the questions that the press asks, as the way that the participants, the way they answer questions and the way they talk, because it's just so matter of fact, and it's business-like, especially when they got guys like the reentry flight director who was on. He was on for the last 2 of these press briefings on Wednesday and Thursday, and he was also actually on the briefing, the post-landing briefing, and that there's a fun comment there, observation that he made. But they're just they're so intense and so smart isn't the right word. It's just intensely knowledgeable and capable people. Serious, capable people. And in talking about it, he was asked the question about those 6 minutes. And he said, he described how he keeps himself as busy as he can, looking at what information he has and trusting in the work that everyone's done to make things happen correctly. And he's looking for things like the blackout starting exactly when predicted, which it was to the second. It did. And that it ended when they expected, which it did. And both of those things told him they were on the right path and everything had happened. And at that point, then it's do all the things related to parachutes work, which they did flawlessly. And it's always wonderful to see the main chutes come out and get fully reefed and slow the spacecraft down to a gentle splashdown of less than 20 miles an hour.
Yeah, it was, that was, like I said, I found it terrifying to watch at 61 years old that I had never felt that before watching those things come down.
Well, yes.
And that's age, right? And so you realize that it seems different now because you know the kind of people that are on there. You know the kind of people that are relying on the kind of people on there. And you've probably sat in a chair that has some responsibility on it, that you know how those people are feeling. The people who made decisions, yes, we think it's good enough to go. And they are, and it's not like they're doing a CYA thing. They just think it will work. They've done all their work and yes, we did everything. We checked all the boxes. We double checked them, triple checked them, and everything we said it should work. But still, there's such a downside for it not working that it was just tremendous relief when, not that I didn't think it would work, but just for all those people out there, that little tiny bit of doubt for everybody that went away, because you have to trust what you know to be true. And they did it. And it was wonderful to see. It was wonderful.
It was amazing. There were two things. One, in the post landing briefing, that entry flight director, I can't remember the question he was asked, but one of the things he said was, "This job is so cool." And I just laughed. I was like, oh man, yes, I can imagine that. And then the other thing, the associate administrator was on that briefing as well. And he said two things. In his opening remarks, he said, "This day belongs to all the people who worked on this project to make it a success." That's what he said. That was his opening remarks. And when asked what was the highlight, the question was, what was the highlight of this mission? And they went to all four of the panelists, and there were different answers, all of which were completely great. The launch, the moment where the crew named the new craters, and we can talk about that. The eclipse behind the moon, and then the associate administrator said, "Tomorrow, when I see my friends again."
Yeah. It's rocket science, right? It's supposed to appear to be this cold, deterministic physics problem, with equations and computers and rocket fuel and steely-eyed missilemen, but
it is all that.
But it is a uniquely human endeavor, and it would be impossible. Like you watch a movie going, and at the end they give you the credits, right? And they have here's produced by so-and-so and directed by so-and-so, and they give it the cast, and then they get into the weeds, like all of these people did all of these things. Here's the guys
the production babies.
The production babies, the guys in charge of the dog training, the guys who did the catering, it's real. If you want to understand good team dynamics, it looked like that had really good team dynamics, right? I mean, that's how you build a success. That's what success looks like in a team environment.
My favorite thing about watching this, among so many favorite things, including the whole Lunar Science Day and the NASA Lunar Science Team and the enthusiasm that was shown there. But my favorite part of this was watching the crew work together as a team, watching the whole team work together, but watching this crew just exemplify and express all the best things about coming together to work towards a common purpose and make it successful, something worthwhile doing, and working together and putting themselves aside to work together as a team to do something really important.
I was going to say that I wonder how they got, if they had to get coached on that sort of thing. But then I thought, I'll bet they weren't coached. I'll bet the reason those people were on the team was because they know that intrinsically. That is a part of their character. And I saw a couple photos from when the crew made it back to the ship. They get helicoptered out and they go onto the ship. And I saw pictures of the individual crew members, like with the ground crew or whatever, it's probably the deck crew, whatever it's called, and the helicopter pilots. And we know some helicopter pilots, right? Here,
yes,
on
we
the
do.
boat.
And
Yes, we do.
and there's a question I would love to ask them about related to this.
Right. But
someday.
you saw those pictures, and like the crew guys they realize they're the face of this, right? So they can't just hide. But that every one of them had as much respect for everybody else on the team as the team members had for them. And that's how you get success. And, for those of us who are sports fans, we get to see that. We don't see it like with a rock. This was a big team doing a really hard thing. All right. But it's when you get to see that, everybody's involved. And when the team wins, everybody wins. And I thought that was a great thing. I want to get, there's three things. You go.
Well, one more thought related to that. I did make the joke. I'm not, as you know, I'm not really a big sports guy like you and Zach. But I did make the joke that, I was watching this every single day. I would get up, I would turn it on, my computer on, I'd get everything going. I made the joke. This is my World Cup. This is my Olympics. This is my Stanley Cup. This is my Super Bowl. The day where they went around the moon. That's the Super Bowl, or
Game 7 of the World Series.
Yes, exactly.
All of those things together. And
that was the reentry day.
Yeah, it is. It is wonderful, and I'm glad you got that, because everybody should be able to feel that, and I can tell in your mannerisms that people can't actually see that this is a time of shared joy.
I am grinning from ear to ear just talking about this again.
There's three things.
I have one more thing I want to point out related to what you said, we were just saying earlier. And that was, it was interesting because in the briefing today, in the welcome home ceremony today, Christina Koch said something interesting. Her words, she talked about how, before she went on, she got involved on this mission, she was asked a question at some event she was at, and, talk about team, what makes a crew. And she talked about that. And she said, I talked about this and I talked about that. And then what she said was, that was all nonsense. I had no idea what a crew was until this happened.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And the whole world got to see it. And we had the discussion during the mission that the other spacey thing that was going on was the Hail Mary movie, the Project Hail Mary movie.
Project Hail Mary.
And that was,
if you haven't seen it, go see it.
Yeah, you should go see it.
That's all I'm going to say.
It's very fun and it's very good. It's full of all the kinds of things that if you go see it, it's like, if the Buff were to sponsor a movie, it would look like that. So that it's full of all sorts of things that are the good. Three things. You get to my three things.
Right.
Okay.
You got the floor.
In what you were discussing. Okay. One of them, I want you to talk about, I'm going to lay the three things out and then let you address them.
Okay.
One of them was, I'm going to call him the NASA director guy because I don't remember his name. But I saw very few bits of him. And I thought of I was impressed. Okay, because I didn't know what to think. You never know what to think of a high-level administrator. Sometimes they're just administrators. Other times they're guys that have made it up through the ranks. There are people that have been, shown to be technically competent and have good people skills. So they get. But this guy was really good, and certainly the way he interviewed, the way he constantly deflected praise to the people, to his teammates, and his genuine, I guess I'll just call it energy. about what we are doing and how we're doing it. And it's hard to say that there would have been a better spokesperson than that guy. I'm sure some people would have done it differently, but he was great. And I thought he did. What's his name? Isaac?
Jared Isaacman.
Jared, yes, that guy. Okay, so I wanted to take a couple statements about him.
Yep.
You talked about naming craters, right? Which leads me to the other thing with tangentially associated with what I'm going to call the dark side of the moon. And we're going to talk about why that's a bad phrase to use unless you're talking about a Pink Floyd album. And then yeah. So I want to go to that, but I want to start with the I'm going to call him NASA director guy and being the face of NASA at this point.
I can say that I'm honestly very enthused about where NASA is right now. The current administrator of NASA is quite possibly the best person that could be there at this time. He is already just in the 3 to 4 months that he has been in the position, he has already changed the direction of NASA for the better in ways that for years really needed to happen, and just there was just no way they were going to happen. And you can see it. You can see it. The workforce, the things I've read, people are reporting that the workforce is energized. Clearly the crew had high praise for him. This is good. This is the right person at the right time, finally showing up to hopefully do the right job. But I have to say that it isn't just him. And yes, he's great, and he says he's saying all the right things, and he's making NASA more open and more responsible, more taking responsibility. But I have to say also that the highest, I have some high praise for the associate administrator, the highest civil servant. I've watched him now in several of these press briefings, and the guy he's from the mission operations, human mission operations in Houston. He's one of those guys. Apparently he worked in his area of expertise was like the robotic arm, that kind of stuff. So he's come up through there. He knows the crews. But there's two things about him. You listen to him and he speaks very technical when he's responding to a technical question.
Okay.
But he is also just astoundingly to me, as a technical person, he is almost poetic when he is talking about the things that require that. And having those two guys be the top of NASA right now, I'm feeling very good about.
Well, that's as good a praise that those guys are going to get. It's like I said, it was. I am
America's favorite rocket scientist.
That's right. So. You could put that on the quote. Okay, dark side of the moon. Craters on the dark side of the moon.
Far side of the moon, please.
Yeah, okay, far side of the moon. Right. Okay, so I saw...
Near side of the moon is the side we see all the time. The far side is the side that's opposite the near side, near, right. Far.
And sometimes when we see the full circle of the moon, I'll call it that, the disk, we see a circle in the sky.
Yes.
That the sun has lit that up, and the other side, the far side, happens to be dark.
Yes.
And sometimes when we can't really see this disk, that's because the far side is lit up. And I saw, and this, here's the thing.
And that would be new moon, by the way.
Yes. I heard somebody say a long time ago that when you hear somebody mispronounce a word, that probably means that they learned that word through reading, not through conversation.
Oh, so interesting.
So if they mispronounce it, you know what? Give them a break. Okay, that was the first thing.
Okay.
And then I applied that to somebody made a post I saw on the interwebs, and it was like, well, this is the dark side of the moon. How come? Where's the sunlight coming from? And people started ripping this person. And I thought, okay, obviously this person doesn't know. So we should just explain it to them. They didn't pick it up in 7th grade science or 12th grade science or 3rd grade science, or they didn't listen to the buff or whatever it is. But there's a lot of stuff that people don't know. And the word, it doesn't help us to demean people that don't know things. It doesn't make them want to learn them. It makes them want to sit and stew in their ignorance. And I think let's just be gracious to people who maybe used the wrong term, and we'll help them get it to the right term that's more precise and more consistent with the truth.
And we've had this conversation before, and I cannot remember whether it was on a recorded episode or one of our post recording session discussions. But yes, it does no good to make someone feel dumb. You want to help raise them up. It's the whole the golden rule. Treat other people the way you would like to be treated. There's things you don't know. I know there's things I don't know. Goodness gracious. And I would like to think that if I say something dumb, that someone would gently tell me why it was dumb and what is actually correct.
Yeah, and this is a big point for me, probably because I was one of those guys who would mock people who didn't know. And that's not a good thing. And I recognize that. And I'm I'm trying to do better, Bob. But that's
and you are.
Well, thank you.
And I hope I was gentle with you when we were starting this conversation.
Yeah, that's right. So there's a lot of stuff out there that you can know and not know. And if you don't know, how else are you going to find out? And it's as long as you're willing to be gently corrected, then we will gently correct, and then we'll all sit down to dinner. And I think that's a great way to do it. Okay, critters on the far side of the moon, naming some critters. Some great pictures came back from there.
It was incredible. The Lunar Science Day was great. The person they had on console on the science console, which is a new console in the Mission Operations Control Room, and it's a position that straddles between the operational requirements that are in mission control and the scientists that are in the science evaluation room, and that person is the bridge. And the lead on console during the flyby past the moon was also on the 2 press briefings the day before. And I have to tell you, one of the most enthusiastic, it was so funny that, at first, after they went through and did their initial, couple sentences, and then the press started asking questions, I was feeling bad because no one was asking this gal questions. And then finally someone asked a question, and it was the enthusiasm and I'm gushing enthusiasm that she displayed over lunar science was just, it was absolutely infectious. And then she started getting all these questions. And by the end of it, she was the star of the show. It was hilarious. And then the next day, and she coined a phrase, which I just love, and I'm going to take with me, which is moonjoy.
Yeah.
Moonjoy is what this was all about. And she was heavily involved in training the crew on the science. She's a geologist herself, and actually a planetary geologist, which someday I'd like to know how a person becomes a planetary geologist. Anyways, but that was just fantastic. And it was really interesting because you could tell the crew, like Reed Wiseman, the commander, you could tell as they were approaching the moon that he was excited.
Right.
You have these different personalities on the crew, and the pilot, Victor Glover, is kind of reserved, but he was also one of the most poetic. Him and the Canadian Jeremy Hansen, they were the most poetic in talking of the crew, and Reed, the commander, was, I would say, the most enthusiastic and easygoing and laughing. He was the spirit of the crew, and it was so interesting to see how excited they were. And at one point, they as they were approaching the moon, they were doing the science, and they were trained scientists at that point, and they had scientific objectives that they were intended to observe, and they went through and they worked all that, and then as they rounded the moon and the lit portion of the moon kind of faded, and the sun, they basically ended up in eclipse, where and we have been in the moon's shadow before, not nearly quite a bit farther away, than the 4,000 miles that they experienced a solar eclipse, being behind the moon, with the moon between them and the sun, and the descriptions coming back of this were just amazing. And the pictures, again, they told us, as you know, and we've talked ourselves about solar eclipses, you can't capture it with a camera. I don't care how good your camera is, you cannot capture it, because it's as much a feeling as it is what you see through your eyes. And even what you see through your eyes isn't what ends up in that photograph. But Victor Glover said, as they came around and they were describing the eclipse, he said, we've gone to sci-fi here. He could not he basically said, this has gone to sci-fi. I cannot describe this. It just is the most incredible thing. And it was just so awesome to listen to them talk about that.
Well, I saw some of the images from the far side, and I would be interested to have a photography person talk about this kind of thing. I have a book. This is the first book I ever purchased on Amazon.com way back in the day. And I think it might just be called Moon. I don't know if it's The Moon or just Moon. And it is a whole book of high resolution photographs from the Apollo missions.
Yes, I know it. I know the book you're talking about. It's basically a coffee table book,
yes.
Large format,
where
the author went and got the original source material, the original film, and scanned it at high resolution.
And what was interesting to me about that was how much stuff in those photographs are not just black, white, and gray. There's a lot of color on the moon that, obviously it's not going to show up on the black and white TV, but even the photographs that you probably know and love, there's at high resolution, there's a lot of color there. And what struck me about the images I saw, now I didn't see photographs, right? Because I saw them on my computer. So I'm seeing however it gets
digital electronic images,
however it gets there. It's, and I don't know if they were enhanced. It's hard to know how much, but the color palette was it was otherworldly, right?
As it turns out, as you would expect.
Yeah. But I was so pleased by that, and it brought me back to the book that I have, the first book I ever bought, and that's another story for another day. But yes. That was wonderful, and if nothing else comes of that, other than people starting to get a good understanding of like what the moon is. Like I noticed after they landed yesterday, and I looked up at the moon when I went for a walk in the evening, and I saw essentially half the moon. From my perspective, I saw, what are we at third? We're at third quarter.
Last quarter, yeah.
Yeah, we're into the fourth quarter now. And the clock is ticking, right? So, but I saw that and I thought, okay, the launch windows matter, because otherwise you won't. I mean, if you go during a full moon time, you won't see any of the far side. It'll be all dark up there, right? So and then I started thinking, oh, okay, so that's probably was one of the reasons they had the launch windows that they did have.
And that was actually, I didn't quite finish the thought. I expressed half of the thought about what Victor Glover was saying about the eclipse. He was saying at first, when they found out that they were going to launch on April 1st, they were disappointed. They were actually disappointed because they were going to have less of the far side of the moon lit, and the science was important to them, and so they were a little disappointed about that. But what they got with launching on the first was that eclipse, which they wouldn't have got if they had launched later in the window. And he said, after seeing the eclipse, we're glad we launched on the first.
Yeah. Well, that's wonderful. It's like, so somebody knew what they were doing.
And the other comment I want to make about the colors before we wrap up here is just that was one of the science objectives, was for them to do color observations and note those color observations.
Yeah. So it's if you get a chance to see those, when you see that photo, you'll know that. Now, I have one last question here.
Okay.
And that is, so what's next? Where do they go from here?
What's next is there will be debriefing. There will be learnings from this flight, and they will then turn around and apply this to the next Artemis mission, which is Artemis II, which is currently planned for middle to latter half of next year, and is intended to be a checkout of the docking of the Orion spacecraft to the whatever lunar landers are ready to fly when they perform this mission.
So they're going to send the lunar lander up there under a separate cover, right? That's
yes,
the plan.
Under a separate launch, one or both of them, and test out connecting to them, and doing that maneuvering and docking and check out.
All right, and that's late 2027. And when do we get?
And then the goal is to do a lunar landing sometime in 2028, and we'll see how that goes, depending on Artemis III.
Wow, this is it's exciting again, and that's very fun.
It is. If there's one thing I want to say about this in closing, it's that this is what we, and I use the large we. This is what we can do when we set our minds to doing something important, and we all pull together in the same direction.
I can't disagree with that. I think there was a feeling, and I heard it like on certain podcasts that I didn't expect would be covered that, or at least discussed things about how they felt. There was a lot of, I don't want to say it was national pride. I don't think that was it at all. I think it was just like, wow, okay, this is a good thing. This is how it felt. Like, because there's a lot of people talking about dismay and despair, and it was good to have a good thing to make people feel good about where we are right now. So, Bob, once again, thank you very much, and I'm sure we'll get some. You have some other conversations tonight, I know, and but we'll talk some more, and we'll get some more updates when they come through, and obviously we will talk sooner than late 2027, and as always, it is one of my great joys to have you on the show. So thank you very much,
and my pleasure as well. Thanks for having me, Rafe.
The rest of you, seek the good. Live virtuously and flourish. Enjoy the moon, your space travel, all those other good things.
Moon joy.
You bring some moon joy and enjoy the adventure of life.
It's going to be a great day.